Welcome to the Talking Stick Show. My name is Dale and we have a special guest with us this morning, Anna-Louise Haigh. Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you doing, Dale?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Thank you for asking me to be here.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure to have you on. I was speaking to you before and we were talking that when I first went into this spiritual awakening process in 2012, the first leaflet I saw in Harrogate was Anna-Louise Haigh. And it was funny how forward 8 years, now 10 years or whatever, we're now speaking and doing this. So it's great to have you on.
Thank you. And you've done so much good work and I know people are benefiting. So well done you.
Thank you so much. And for those who have not heard of you before, what you do.
Well, thank you. The first thing people generally ask about is the accent, and it's a mixture between Yorkshire and Canadian. And a lot of people tend to think it's got an Irish twang as well. So I'm kind of mid-Atlantic bouncing around. And that's because although I was born in Yorkshire, I grew up in Canada and then came back 17 years later, which was really an impulse to follow, I suppose, I wouldn't have used these words back then in 1983, but I was following my soul's impulse. And the reality is that for me, I suppose I was seen as a rebel in most of my early years, as adolescents can be, but generally a rebel stroke misfit, stroke hermit, person who didn't need a lot of people around, even as a child. And I enjoyed my own company. And I never felt alone. And I was always connected to the stars, the moon, nature, trees, and so on. And that really has just given me the playground to follow my heart, the confidence to follow my heart. And where that's led me is to the path of healing, being a healer, which led me into being a therapist and a teacher, a school principal, created a therapy, and have lectured all around the world and traveled all around the world learning and studying and teaching. So I've had a really blissful time of it. And I don't feel like I've worked one day in my whole therapy related career, because how can you call it work when you enjoy it so much and you're following your passion? So that's a bit about me.
Beautiful. And so what was it like? So you've given a brief explanation of your childhood. What was it like going onto this path? Was there a specific point where you realized the way I'm living or the job I had's not serving me anymore? Was there any catalyst for your change at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to, when I came back to England, I was only going to come for 3 months. And that, like I say, was in 1983. And I've been here now 35, 36 years. That wasn't planned, but it feels like home, and that's great. One of the jobs I got was working for the Yorkshire Post and selling advertising. And I started off in the classified ads where you'd ring up and you have your kittens to get rid of and one thing and another and all the rest of it. And I ended up working as an advisor, basically, as part of the Yorkshire Post group in Harrogate, ultimately. And selling advertising, dear me, just something that I just didn't believe in after a while, because it was so forced and so false. Yeah. And it was making me squirm inside. And I left my Yorkshire Post job with no training at the age of 27. And I just thought, if I don't do it now, I am going to die in so many ways. So age 27, I left the Yorkshire Post. And I needed a year to decompress from the stress and to find myself again and to recalibrate my purpose, if you like. And in that year, I did my training in aromatherapy and reflexology, and that was great. But I still didn't do an awful lot of therapy clients because I just needed to recalibrate. And then I needed to get a job again. So I went back into the newspaper industry selling advertising again. And it was just like, oh, God, my soul was sighing in desperation. And literally the normal job by that point in Harrogate, working for the Ackrill newspaper group, my client list blossomed, and so I was running two careers side by side for 18 months, and then I finally took the leap again. And I never wasn't doing my therapies in my head. I was always learning and educating myself, and growing personally and spiritually, going through my own stuff, you know. but came out of it the better person to be able to serve, I hope. And so we're going back over 30 years now. So I guess something came together right.
So for those people listening who are finding it hard, they're stuck in a job and they're wanting to break free and go into a career which they're actually happy with, what's a bit of advice you can give for those people who are really at a standing point, especially at this time in the moment of now?
Yeah, do you know, I know that a lot of people that I'm speaking to have taken this period of time to recalibrate, to step back and say, wow, what do I really want? What do I really need? And there's a whole new awakening coming. And I think the best thing to do is, unless you've got some cushion of money underneath you that you can give yourself 6 months to a year of not having to worry about that, I would suggest that you take your time, but give yourself time and permission to actually really invest in the image and the feeling of what you want to achieve. Get the feeling first of where you want to be in your new career or your new adventure, and then come true. So maybe it's training or moving or doing something. In other words, unless you've got a financial cushion and you can take the time and take the stress off you, take a slower journey, but it'll be more solid because you won't be panicking about the money and the security. Because when you start panicking about the money and the security, it just saps you and you can't really be free and creative. And that's what the soul craves, is to be free. So whatever you're feeling, it's your path. It is the way to go. You will get there. Just do it without causing yourself extra drama like I did with no income and stuff, because why would you?
So how are you finding it during this COVID-19 situation? How has it been like for you and your business?
Well, I mean, after getting over the whole thing of, are we living in a futuristic movie? I found I went through my stages of grief, and just all the shock and disbelief, and then the anger, and then the bargaining, and it's like, oh my goodness. But ultimately, after a few days, a couple of weeks, I've really settled into the way of it. And to be honest with you, although I do see some clients privately still, the majority of my time is actually spent online with groups of people, and also delivering my courses online. So there hasn't been an awful lot of difference. There was a slight change. I needed to change my environment for a while, and that's coming back around now, thank goodness. And that presented a whole new opportunity of freedom. So I've actually been really loving it. You don't want to hear everybody say that, but I've been loving it, and it's given me time to focus and really put some things on the map that I wanted to do, and such as my new program and stuff. And that has really been so exciting, and I'm working with such amazing people, and I'm just loving it.
Lovely. And for those who are finding it hard, is there any advice you'd give them going through this difficult time? For me, I think it's been harder the last week than it's been at the start, because we this lockdowns, you're allowed 6 people in the garden, so you think you've got full freedom there, and you go out and do that, then you come back in, you your reality is still controlled and limited in a way. How is it? What advice for people who are stuck in their own self, so to say?
Well, if you're only gonna be able to have 6 people in your garden at any one time, choose carefully. Make sure you surround yourself with the people you really want to spend time with, because this is a really important time. I liken it to, we've been through kind of like a transformation. So we've gone from being a caterpillar in our daily lives, we've gone into the cocoon of the early weeks of the majority weeks of lockdown.
Yeah.
And in that time, things will have changed within people. And you're not going to be the same person coming out of lockdown as you went in. Ideally, you're not, because you'll have had time to reflect, you'll have time to recalibrate and decide what's of value to you, who's of value to you. So I think for anybody who has been struggling with lockdown, maybe think back to what your life was like before lockdown. What parts do you want to keep? And what parts do you want to not take forward? And be honest with yourself. The same kind of thinking that got you into places you weren't happy with before is not going to get you out of them now. And you've been given a great chance to reemerge in a way that will really light you up inside. And doing that means that you may make choices and changes, but you won't be the only one. Maybe some of your friends who you're thinking, as our time done, maybe they're thinking the same thing. So don't force it to stay together.
That's it, yeah.
Treat it as an opportunity and an adventure rather than something that's been forced upon you. And it's a confusing time right now, I think. We're in, we're out, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're not. It will pass. But make sure that what you take forward is what really lights you up inside.
Yeah, it was funny. I went out for a ceremony the other day on the full moon, and it was very strange and surreal because at the start, because I'm so used to speaking to my family, I kind of forgot a little bit how to socialize, and I'm speaking on here. So it was really funny. We were all like around in a circle, and I was like, shit, what do I say now? And I'm so used to doing it. I've done years and years of doing ceremonies, and it was having those people skills back. And like you say, it's so important to surround yourself with people who are your true friends, positive, and inspire you to become better people. Can we go into a little bit into why friendships are so important for you to inspire you?
Yeah. And people come into your lifetime, come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think nothing wrong and everything right about sitting back every now and again and just feeling your way through your relationships and your friendships, and even on Facebook and stuff like that. We are obliged in some ways with social media to connect with people who perhaps just aren't in our remit, and we don't want to upset anybody and don't want to be nasty in any way, but at the same time you need to be true to yourself, because that's all you got to take with you. You come in alone, you die alone. All you got to do is honor yourself along the way, and things will work out beautifully.
Beautiful. And so, talking about honesty as well, you touched about honesty. Why is honesty so important in this, to be authentic?
Well, gosh, that is such a fabulous question, Dale. Thank you. Honesty is what brings you health, and ultimately it will bring you all the wealth you need. If you think it's financial, then fair enough. But wealth in terms of the right kind of people who nurture you and you can nurture, it's an equal exchange. It will bring you happiness and joy and inner peace. And to me, that's golden wealth. The thing is, authenticity has been, the word authenticity or authentic has been such a used word. It's like, does it really have any meaning anymore?
Yeah.
But to be authentic, in my perception, is about being able to be completely honest with yourself and look at the not so shiny side, but celebrate the shiny side. So the shadow and the shine actually get acknowledged, and you don't beat yourself up, you don't judge yourself, you don't judge others. But in being authentic, it involves also, being able to connect with your soul, follow your soul's nudges. And for some people, it would say take risks and have courage, which I get from an external kind of perspective. But from an internal perspective, you are following your truth. And it may take the occasional extra ramping up of honesty and courage and truth to move forward. But when you know it's the right path, you just get up and go.
Yeah. Beautiful. And it's funny how the authenticity and honesty connects with the friends as well, because once you start being truthful toward yourself, you have true people in your life. It seems to be when you're not following yourself, or you're living not in your true authentic self, is you seem to have a lot of false people around you, and you kind of, it's like the universe kind of mirroring what we're kind of projecting.
Exactly. You end up getting pulled off your path, saying yes when you really want to say no, and finding yourself in a complete tangle that actually probably has one core seed of a decision or a belief at the bottom of it, but it spins out of control, and all of a sudden you think you've got all this massive amount of problems to solve when really you don't. It's one moment of self-awareness. standing in your power, being in your truth, that actually will hunker you into letting all of that dissolve. It sounds simple, I know, but self-awareness is the key for it.
And so what are some of the things we can do to be authentic then? What are some of the, say, processes we go through to really figure out ourselves, for those who are wanting, say, listening now, are kind of wanting to look at the shadowy parts of themselves and really see them on a whole? How are we able to do this and kind of read ourselves, if that's a word?
Yeah, well, of course. So, it's a massive topic, but to start off with is to know that it is possible to stand in your authenticity, no matter what you think you have done or said, or how you are presently placed in life. If you've got a job that doesn't light you up inside, that's not authentic. If you're in a relationship that makes your heart sing when you're approaching your doorstep and coming home at night, that needs attention. If you are constantly getting feelings within you that go thud, or that make you feel sad or squirm inside, then you are not following your authenticity. And your authenticity is hugely aligned with how the soul communicates, and it's through those feelings. So what you're looking for to know something is authentically in your remit is something that lights you up inside, that makes you feel excited, that gives you that Zoom feeling. And to get to know that is about starting with small things. I went and grabbed myself a drink before I came on here, and I said to myself, do I want water? Do I want coffee? Do I want it's like a lemon tonic thing. And it was like, lemon tonic, oh yeah. And so a silly example, but that to the soul and to your authenticity meter is no different than saying, do I want to date that person? Is this the right job for me? Because the feeling experience is the same. So how to do that, Dale, is about tuning in and not thinking you have all the answers, because you have information here. You don't have answers here. You have information. Answers dwell within the barometer of the heart.
Beautiful. And so talking into this, so why is it important for people to say no? Because I know a lot of people are yes sayers for everything. And a family member was talking to me the other day, and she was saying, all my life I've just said yes to everyone, and I've not actually been able to filter through what I really want, or kind of what I'm just agreeing to, like a social environment. Why is it important to say the no, and for those people to come into the power and say, if I don't want to do it, I can say no to the energy?
Yeah, and why is it important? Because if you don't live a life that honors yourself by saying yes to yourself, at least some of the time, then what happens is you feel completely unfulfilled, and your life is one of service rather than celebration. So actually resonate through your entire psychology, which goes into your well-being and can lead, not necessarily to your family member maybe right now, but it can lead into depression, it can lead into anxiety, it can lead into other conditions, which basically are a representation of the stored energy that has not been vocalized or has been internalized so deeply that it stores up in an organ and creates a condition, a toxicity condition. And if we remember that every thought you think long and strong creates a physiological response in your body, and that's been scientifically proven, then when we're not saying yes to ourselves and we are continually saying no to ourselves, what we're doing is we're drip feeding that toxin, which eventually could have a physiological representation. It's important because it's all about who you are and your well-being on every level.
Beautiful. So let's talk forward to the empowerment, because I feel that connects a lot to the authenticity. How can one be empowered? And what does empowerment mean in the spiritual sense?
Okay, so empowerment to me means being able to stand, it comes back around full circle, stand in your power, stand in your truth, know that you are more than just your five senses, know that you are here for a purpose, on purpose. Your soul chose to be here at this time, And although your soul doesn't run the show of your life, it did give you the starting blocks of where you began with mom and dad and everything. And when empowerment comes into play, it's about knowing yourself well enough to know what your boundaries are, so you don't get hijacked down some red herring path, to know what's acceptable and what's not, to give yourself a voice to speak what's in your heart with kindness and compassion. So empowerment to me means being able to show up as you were born to be through the wisdom and messages of your heart, your soul, enhanced by the intelligence that you carry, not by the ego, but by the intelligence that you carry, so you can articulate what you're speaking about, what you need to say. How do we do that? A lot of people find help through meditating. Others find help through being in nature and tuning into the subtle messages that they get. Another way to find out how to step into that empowerment is to look at how other people who you admire or you revere, look at how they show up, and what is it that they do, or what beliefs do they carry that let them show up in a way that you think, yeah, I can see that that's a resonance here with me. I want to be more like that. Because often it's often the case that of the people we spend the most time with, not necessarily physically these days, online and stuff, the people we spend the most time with are the ones that we actually take little bits of their character and weave them into ourselves. So this is why it's really important to be careful who you hang out with. And when we take the best of what we see around us and weave it into ourselves through our own filter of who we are, then we can actually come up with this sense of we are inner powered, empowered, because we've gained more awareness about ourselves. So awareness is the key, empowerment is the result, and enacting it is the benefit that you give yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, for me, empowerment, like you were saying, meditation for me has really helped empower myself, because it's helped me go and find and filter out all the crap, filter out all the stuff which has been whizzing over my head, and it's made me feel a lot clearer. So going into meditation, how does this connect to empowerment more, and why is meditation important for all of us who are suffering from issues or shadow issues, health issues, so on and so forth?
Meditation done regularly in a way that suits the individual is so incredibly powerful, because it gets you into your stillness. And in your stillness, you can connect with your soul's wisdom and voice. Now, for a lot of people, they say, I can't meditate because my mind chatters and all the rest of it. Well, you know what? You can meditate washing the dishes. Just let your mind go soft and go into the rhythm of washing the dishes, stare out the window or whatever. And, a breath is a meditation. So if you were to sit still, close your eyes, take a slow, deep in-breath, hold it for, say, to the count of 4, then release and then hold again. What that cycle, that 4-stage cycle does is it actually recalibrates your brain, your body chemistry, and so on. And to get into that releases the stress, the tension, and it allows more relaxation and therefore more inspiration to come to you. It won't necessarily give you all the answers, but it will give you the opportunity to start understanding the way forward. And that may help you release some of your shadow self. And the big thing is with meditation is not to judge yourself for how you do it or for what you receive as an imagery. So if you were meditating and this image came up of something you did that you weren't too pleased about, you weren't too happy about yourself, meditating is about not judging what you get. It's about saying, that's interesting. Okay, now if I had that chance again, what would I do differently? And meditation lets you rehearse things so you can make changes. And a lot of people use meditation along with visualization to achieve whatever they need to achieve. And during the last Olympics, almost every interview I saw with a winning athlete, how did you prepare? I visualized, I meditated. And it's about training your brain to see a new way forward. And meditation can do that, because when you start doing that, everything else follows.
Beautiful. So you were talking about inner wisdom a bit earlier. So what is inner wisdom, and explain a little bit more about this?
Inner wisdom to me is the voice of your soul, which gives you the benefit of its lifetimes of learning. And that wisdom can also be enhanced by your own this lifetime's experiences, where you reflect upon something that happened to you or that you did and said, okay, I don't want to repeat that. What can I learn? And then take that learning and apply it to future similar situations. So wisdom is not something that can be learned. You learn and then you gain wisdom.
Beautiful, beautiful. And is it kind of an inner knowledge, and is the wisdom connected to the soul then? Is it kind of like a crossover? When you connect into the soul, you connect into the inner wisdom? Is that the right words?
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. And the thing is that your soul, over its many lifetimes, has had umpteen different experiences. And out of each one, bearing in mind it was hosted by a human who had free will, so takes a long time to learn some lessons sometimes. It's how it goes.
And it comes back around the next year to say, hello, you still haven't sorted it out.
Exactly. But yeah, your inner wisdom is like a big library in your soul's world. And when we have an experience in this lifetime, we can choose to sit back, go into that library of experience and go, okay, to do, what would I do? So it's again going back into that still space where the power is. And okay, you get an inspiration, you might get an image, you might get a word, you might get a feeling. Right, this is what my soul would do because it's been through this before. Boom, I go, I do what I'm doing. And with that, it gives you the opportunity to act on the wisdom. And every time you learn something and you put it into that library, your soul will take that forward. So wisdom is the inner inspiration to help you make better of life circumstances.
Beautiful. So let's go on to the shadow now. So a lot of people resonate and like to look into the shadow work. What is the shadow for someone who's not heard of the shadow?
Okay, well, shadow work is pretty much looking at that part of yourself you really don't want to admit to. That you know has come out to play every now and again, but it's not you on your best day, put it that way. And often the shadow side will accumulate because it draws in a lot of negative energy and it repeats patterns. So a shadow side might be a temptation to lie, or a temptation to be bitchy unnecessarily, or judgmental. And that's all kind of shadow side in that way. Shadow side, we've all got a shadow side. We've all done stuff in this lifetime that we are not proud of, and yet we can learn from that. So that gets translated into wisdom for future. But shadow work can be very deep, and it can be very, for some people, very traumatic, because it's going into aspects of themselves that they really have buried very deeply. And yet, often that's where the source of their growth lies. And with good soul work, with good tools and approaches, it can actually be illuminated. And any shadow, think about it, you go down a dark alley, there's lots of scary shadows. Well, if you threw a bunch of light down there, you go, oh, there's nothing really here to worry about. Well, when we start to put light into the shadow, we find that sometimes it's just a small thing that needs to be soothed and resolved. And then we can go forward. Not always, but often.
And it's so important to not judge, like you were saying, how important it is to not judge ourselves. And for those who are listening who always seem to be judging, how can you stop yourself from judging and really focusing and going in the space and experiencing the soul? How does one stop this judgment and release that? So
I would say through self-awareness, and it starts with listening to, or being aware of what your thoughts are, because whatever you're saying outwardly about somebody else or whatever you're judging, you're actually judging yourself in that way. And so we don't like to look at that because it feels uncomfortable. It's easier to project outwardly. But if we take some time to be self-aware as to what we are passing judgment on and what we feel is somebody else's failings and couldn't possibly be our own, is about basically coming back to the center and saying, hold on a minute. If I spot it, I've probably got it. So if you spot unfairness, oh, that's so unfair, that's so unjust. Okay, that situation is going to carry on no matter what you think. But then you say to yourself, how am I unfair and unjust to others or to myself? Ask myself that question. Do some journaling on it, do some meditating on it, and come up with your awareness, because awareness, self-awareness leads to self-knowing, and that lets you diffuse the need to judge because you know who you are, and therefore you can see stuff out there as stuff out there.
Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, for me, judgment has been about, I've got a lot of it from I think looking back, I've got a lot of it from my parents and how dad shouting at the telly and stuff like that. So it's amazing how you subtly brought up by these programs. Let's talk about the relationship with the parents. And for me, one of my, I would say, hardest or biggest hurdles was understanding my pet relationship with my parents, forgiveness, so on and so forth. So from your perspective, what is looking into the parents and stuff like that, how is it important for us to be able to work with the family, forgive, so on and so forth on that front?
Okay, well, you can take it from two different perspectives. First of all, from a human perspective, your parents were people before they had you. They were brought up by a certain set of values and beliefs, which are probably would seem very harsh and outdated in this day and age. Yeah. Or certainly when you were born, they were maybe 25, 30 and things have changed what their parenting was like. Your parents may have had unresolved issues that they didn't even know they had those issues, but they're just perpetuating the same thing again and again and again. And it may well be that they didn't have the luxury and the freedom of thinking to be able to question the BS stories they were told as a child, and maybe they suffered some form of abuse, or I'm not saying your parents, but maybe they suffered some form of neglect or abuse or shame or guilt or whatever that has just been in there and has festered, and out you pop this shiny little sparkly baby, and it kind of pushes their buttons because you're so innocent and lovely, and they want to be like that. They just... it's like, oh my God, this could have been me. It was me. What happened? And it's a great call to awareness for a parent, I would imagine. And so that's one thing. Remember, your parents were people before they had you, and they probably still have a whole bundle of stuff that they'd like to fulfill and achieve and resolve in their lifetime, but they might not have the language or the belief they can do it. We're lucky in this day and age because we can. From a soul perspective, the soul chooses which parentage it needs to give it the starting blocks for the life it wants to grow through. So the soul doesn't know everything that's going to happen to you as the host. It knows how it needs to start because it has levels of understanding it needs to gain. Its soul journey, its mission, whatever you want to call it. So by getting the starting blocks as it needs to be, and yes, I appreciate some souls come into families where it's an unwholesome environment or it's going to be tricky and all the rest of it, and some come in blissful. It's about the starting blocks, and then it's about what happens as the little human grows, what they gain as insight from the family, school, religion, and all the rest of it from the world. And it's then how that soul is able to connect with the person to make the best they can of the journey they've got. And that's where the person's free will, when they get articulate enough, when the person's free will to make their own choices to either follow the head or the heart, that's when the early starting blocks come into play and see how it worked out, basically. So yeah, there's a lot in it.
So for those who are suffering with childhood trauma, what would be a good way to work on the trauma?
Well, I would suggest if it's deep trauma that they find a good mentor or good psychological coach type person to help. If it's something that's kind of they're aware of and they feel they can manage it themselves, that it's within their remit, I would suggest doing some good work in terms of self-discovery and meaningful awakening experiences, so that you can actually see the two sides of where you are, where you could be, and how you navigate. So you get the tools and techniques either on an online program or with a good mentor or through some kind of combination of those two.
Beautiful. And it's interesting, all of this kind of combines, doesn't it, with the non-judgment and the forgiveness. A lot of people are really find it hard to forgive the parents and forgive the situations.
They do, and it's because we're taught that there's always somebody at fault. And so when we come into forgiveness, if we can take forgiveness as an opportunity to learn, and what can we learn out of X event that helps us grow? And it's not saying that we accept the event or we want it to happen again, or that whoever did it is okay in what they did. It's about saying, all right, the only person I can be controlling of is myself. And therefore, I'm going to choose how I move forward and take what I take from this experience. That may never resolve over there. How they are may never resolve, and that's not my job. My job is to make sure I'm whole and complete, and I will learn what I can. And if that's what's called forgiveness, then you can forgive yourself for being tucked into that fold of disharmony, basically. And let yourself be free. That's all the soul wants. It wants to enjoy the freedom to express itself and to be itself through the human host, to give you the best benefit.
It really does. It reminded me of when I was out in for a walk a few days ago or a week ago, and I was really out, and I thought to myself, how does it feel to be truly free and truly to be this inner child again? Because I'm walking around and I've got so much stuff attached to my brain and my back where it's like, right, I need to be getting more clients, or I need to be doing this, I need to be doing the show. And it was like you were saying, talking about freedom. It's so important to feel free. And you talked about being the butterfly when we spoke about the other day, and just kind of flying around and being lighthearted. And it's so hard for some people, for myself sometimes, to really switch off and go, hang on a minute, I'm free, and can I just be in the joy and be in the blissful experience?
It's true. And the thing is that, there seems to be this concept that for people who want to follow their spiritual path and to have that sense of freedom are careless rather than carefree, and that they don't take things seriously, and that they are the butterfly and just flit around and, oh, isn't life wonderful, totally ungrounded. And for people who have done the work, who have ventured along their authentic awakening path, that is anything but the truth. They have done the hard work. They have faced and tackled the shadow. They have faced themselves in the mirror of truth and authenticity. I mean, called to never hide again. So when you see somebody who's really done the work and you think they're all airy-fairy, couldn't care lessy, It's because they've earned the right to do that. Because they've done the work. They haven't hidden behind the job, the car, the relationship, the house, the bling, and all the rest of it. They've done the work. They've probably lost everything in one way or another, more than once and in more than one way, because that's how their life was going to go. And maybe their choices took them there, or maybe life's events needed them to go there. But for people who've really done the work, they may not, show up as you might expect. They may look like me or you or whatever, instead of being out, doing other things. But it's about knowing where your value is, knowing what your value is, and knowing who you are without your stuff. Because at the end of the day, we are what we leave behind, and it's not about the stuff, it's about the imprint on the heart.
It's funny, we talking about this, it reminded me of a few years back. Say I got into the healing in 2012, and there was, for some reason, I was kind of like drawn straight into doing Reiki sessions and stuff like that. But I didn't really see myself in my shadow and what I needed to fix in my life. So I was 100%, 100 mile an hour straight into this spiritual life, right? I had like 20 people, 30 people coming to events, and I was getting, all of a sudden I was just, because my life was so imbalanced and because I wasn't being truthful to myself, my family life was unbalanced. And with all sorts of things, addictions, trauma, it was kind of, everything was kind of, I use spirituality as a mask for dealing with my own shit. And it's the last like 3-4 years has been the point where I've been doing the slow inner work, where, and knowing that it's bloody hard. It's not an easy journey to do the inner work and go back and see that side of yourself where you're like, whoa, like, did I really do that, or did I really feel that way? So yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it reminded me, even though I've still got a hell of a lot of work to do, it's just a process, isn't it, of something we should be doing at all time and chipping away at ourselves.
Absolutely. And you know exactly what you've described there about going full on into the spiritual world and then kind of going, hold on a minute. There's a real different level here to true awakening, really, true authenticity. It's so common, and I find people all the time that come across my path, and they're listening to this and listening to that and doing this and doing that, and they get so overwhelmed and confused. And it's just a case of, hold on a minute, stop, pull back, and learn how to listen to yourself. And the reality is, you know, we can all get consumed and taken off a path with a red herring or some kind of, you know, something somebody else finds wonderful. But it really is about self-knowing and self-honoring. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, because I've been there. I know a lot of people get there, and hopefully, you know, what you're doing here and what my work's about, we help people just hold the reins and be able to drive that path comfortably and not get dragged away with it.
That's it. And yeah, it was a very funny journey, because it was just, I was trying to help other people, but I wasn't helping myself. And what I was teaching, what I was saying, I wasn't doing myself. And for me, it's I don't really listen to, I read books and I follow a lot of Native American traditions, but I tend to not go on YouTube and listen to a lot of people. I'll have sessions, because I think there's a fine line between overload. I know so many people who are overloaded with information, but they've got no, like you say, inner wisdom, because they've not done the work of themselves. They're so smart, they know everything about everything, YouTube University on this and that. They've totally lost touch with themselves. So a good question would be, why is it important to not be overloaded with information?
Why is it important not to be overloaded with information? Because it takes you down a rabbit hole, and before you know it, nobody can even grab hold of your ankles. It sets you ungrounded, which makes you vulnerable to every whim and headline that comes along. It makes you unable to stand in your power, and it makes you unable to function in a balanced way. Nothing to do with spiritual even. It makes you unable to function in a balanced way that helps you progress normally through life, because there's so much coming at you, and there's no time to filter it, or you have no measure against which you can say, whether is this right for me, is that right for me, is this true, not true. And it completely takes you away from your growing path, your authenticity path. And I see it far too often, and I'm hoping that coming out of lockdown, that, I mean, the work I've been doing is to show up every day in my Facebook group to deliver a piece of insight and hopefully wisdom, and to help take the people who come on live. And I never know who all's going to come, but there's a nice little collection, and anybody can join. Yeah. But what I'm hoping is that people who work in the realms that I work in can help guide the people who maybe are suddenly going, oh, look, I can have a spiritual life, this is what I want, and help them not disappear down a rabbit hole, but help them take it steady, knowing that it's not a race, not a competition. They're showing up at the right time, they're making good use of their awareness, and moving forward.
Beautiful. And connecting with this, the process of, people always say, if you're listening to someone, a lot of people go into that judgment by not agreeing with what someone said, but they're kind of losing touch on their spirit, aren't they? Because the soul's there experiencing the moment, listening to them from their own heart and truth. But the minds and the programs are trying to, hang on a minute, I don't believe that. Why is it important to not believe, judge what everyone's saying and always counter arguing? I've met so many people in my life where they'd ask me how I'm feeling, and I give them the truth and I give them my perspective on something, and they'll be like, I don't agree with that. And it's like a program comes out of them, and they try and argue with you and limit you as a person and as a being. Why is it important to be able to relax and not have this energy of always making sure they're wrong, they're right, and kind of accepting?
Karma is the word. People tend to think of karma as something big and scary. You do a really bad thing and karma's going to get you eventually down the line. When we judge somebody else, or when we try and change somebody's perspective into our own without fully understanding our own perspective and where it came from, or the other person's perspective, what you're actually doing is you're bending the journey of somebody else.
Yeah.
And that is karma incurring. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be struck by lightning because you were bad. It means that your own growth as a karmic repayment, your own growth, because you're not listening and being willing to accept other people's perspectives as, hey, that's okay, we can all live on the same planet. The karmic repayment is you don't grow. You stay stuck in a closed-minded bubble that actually is not going to get you anywhere. So to be able to listen with compassion and kindness, and to take on board and say, well, that's a perspective I hadn't considered. Maybe you can learn something from that. You can re-anchor your own perspective, or you can grow your perspective. So it's super important not to judge or belittle or condemn somebody else's beliefs just because they don't match with yours. And of course, we all want to be safe. We all want to be happy. We all want to be loved. So long as you're hearing stuff that is only marginally on the edge of that, as opposed to quite scarily on the edge, then, be open to learn and listen and accept. Acceptance is one of the biggest things.
That's it. And not, like you say, stepping on people's journey. And even if they're speaking to you and they don't ask for advice, but there's part of us wants to give them advice and wants to heal them, wants to change their life. That's kind of like the martyr in ourselves, isn't it? Where we have to kind of take control of our reality and understand that everyone is on their own sacred journey and they've got their own free will. And if they don't ask for help, you don't have to give them help. And it's okay for them to let go of it. A lot of people find it hard in relationships when people go down the wrong road, and for them to let them do that and go through that experience without entangling or trying to, like you say, create this karmic soup.
Yeah, exactly. And, we all learn by being in the company of others. And yet, if you think you're a cup fully full, you're not going to learn anything. So, you've got to be self-aware.
Definitely. And so going on to going on to depression. So where does depression come into all of this?
Well, my understanding, I've done a lot of study and work along the lines of the Chinese medical philosophy. My time in China helped validate that, and the work I've done over the last few decades has helped with that. And so depression is often an accumulation of pent-up anger, which has turned inwards and become like this boiling cauldron. And instead of it being expressed properly, it goes into a very deep depth, and it is stored in the liver, and that's where a lot of the heat from the body comes from. So this is where you get flares of anger, and the body flows, kind of very physiological response. Depression and its relationship to anger often come from regret. And it comes from looking back in life rather than being in the present moment. So it's very much a case, although this is a very simplistic view, to me, depression is the playground of somebody who has got something that needed to be said at some point to a certain someone. That moment has long gone, but the need to say what needs to be said, to right the wrongs, to have your say, to be heard, to be validated, to be listened to, whatever, that has gone because that time has gone, and yet the need is still there. It can't be expressed. The right person isn't there anymore, or the right situation, and therefore it's like bubbling inwardly. For me, I mean, I've suffered with depression and anxiety. So depression's about looking backwards, anxiety is about looking forward. You know, I've been in there. I've been in the ping pong between the two, and social anxiety and so on. And it's about not being grounded and not being attached to the wisdom of your soul. So I know when I was suffering with depression and anxiety, it was very much a case of I was looking outside myself at circumstances and blaming others. And yet, when I was able to work through that, it was a case of when I came home to myself, came home to my soul, I knew there was a lot of learning in there. And that's where a lot of my remits come from. It's my personal journey, my birth journey, my pre-birth journey. And that is unique to me. And that gives me the perspectives I have to work and help other people and get untangled in that way. So depression for me can be a very powerful tool to grow from when you can step back and lay the environment out in front of you and then unpick it therapeutically and mindfully and soulfully.
Beautiful. And it's so great to have you on, because you can really, like you talk about the authenticity, you can really feel it when you're talking, because you're sharing your own experience, you're sharing your own trials and getting over things. So it's beautiful that you're able to help people who are on this journey. And so what retreats have you got coming up then? You've got some courses online. Can you give everyone a description of what's going on?
Well, I'm really blessed. Like I said before, I don't work. I get up every day to do me and what I love doing and what I'm here to do. So one of those things is my retreats. Now, this is at present, they're a bit knackered really because of the COVID-19. However, I've got a big one that was meant to be happening in Glastonbury, and that's now transferred to next year, to next July. I've run that now. That'll be 10 years that I've run it. And that is all about awaken your wow. So it's about getting to those early stages of learning to listen to your soul and let go of all the illusion and emerge from that retreat feeling all bright and sparkly. And that's the same theme. The Dales, the Yorkshire Dales, at the end of August, fingers crossed, and more hopefully at the end of September this year. So I'm sure both will happen actually. And that's out in a most amazing setting out in the Dales. And again, it's awaken your wow. So wow is your weaver of wisdom, which is your soul. So it's all about that early awakening journey. Online, I've got my 9-month program, which starts quarterly on the solstices and the equinoxes, and that's called The Way of Your Soul. I only take small groups on that. It is a deep dive program, but it takes you from that starting point of who am I and where am I going, with those vague questions but know they have a big answer, to being able to answer who am I and where am I going, from the soul space to the galactic. And I'm so looking forward to starting the next group. I've got an amazing group of people. So I do smaller things online as well, but those are my main things because I like to work with people who are ready to emerge. I work primarily with women, I will say, because I understand the female psyche. I understand what it's like to go through a lot of the things women go through. And from that perspective, I know that my soul is meeting the needs of the souls I'm meant to meet. Yeah, that's me.
So how can people get in touch with you then?
Well, my website is one of the best ways, which is Anna-Louise I'm all over Facebook, and my Facebook group, if you'd like to join, is called Living in Your Wow. Just find that on Facebook. There's a couple of questions to answer regarding how we like to go on in the group. And I'd be delighted to welcome new members because we're growing all the time. And there's also the Awaken Your Wow page, which is there. Just hop onto that and have a like. So I'm there every day, and I do regular weekly online delivery as well for meditation and inspiration. And that's me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It truly has been a journey on hearing your perspective. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me. And it's all just stuff to consider. Everybody will find their own way. So thanks very much, Dale.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so thank you everyone for watching. If you like what you hear and see, please subscribe and please comment. I really appreciate your feedback and support. Thank you.